Left Field Investors is a community dedicated to limited partner investors who are interested in building wealth through real estate investing. The community is focused on education, networking, and engagement with quality operators and partners. We provide tools, webinars, and a forum where members can discuss everything related to real estate investing, including deals, operators, investment strategies, and much more. We're adding a new tool, sponsor reviews. This will be a place where our members can rate and review operating partners to further help each other in our investment journeys. Check us out at leftfieldinvestors.com.
I remember that the moment that light bulb came on for me, that real estate could slowly start to replace my income. And I thought, holy cow, nobody has ever taught me this. Nobody ever connected the dots for me. And imagine if other women, other moms had access to this and could build wealth for their families and live the life that they've always wanted.
Hello, Left Fielders. Welcome to the Passive Investing from Left Field podcast. Our community is focused on networking and education to help people invest passively and think differently. Let's go.
This is Whitney Soul from LifeBridge Capital. You are listening to Passive Investing from Left Field.
I'm really excited today to have Annie Dickerson with us. She is a real estate investing expert with over a decade of experience, and she is the co-founder of Goodegg Investments, where they have facilitated over $1.4 billion in commercial real estate investments. Annie is also the co-host of the Life and Money Show podcast. Annie, welcome to the Passive Investing from Left Field podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. I'm thrilled to be here with you and your listeners.
I'm excited to have this conversation, but before we begin, we always start out with your journey. How did you get into real estate? How did you figure out, hey, I'm going to start this investment company? If you can just kind of tell us your story.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, growing up, real estate was the farthest thing from my mind. I never thought I would get into either real estate or business. I was focused on climbing the corporate ladder. My parents never even bought a house the whole time I was growing up. So we were always paying rent. We were always renters. And what happened was, after college, I became a teacher. And I joined Teach for America and taught in high crime, high poverty neighborhoods. And the paycheck doesn't always align with the work that you do. Let's just put it that way. I was very disappointed the first paycheck I got, but I thought, okay, if I want to sustain in this, if I want to keep teaching, I want to be able to build a lifestyle around this. How do I do that? And so around that time, my husband and I, because we did the thing, we got married, we looked down the list, we said, oh, what's next? Oh, buy a house. Let's buy a house. And so we were going to buy a house. We were living in Washington, D.C. at the time. But thankfully, we had an amazing realtor who convinced us not to buy a single family home, but a duplex. And he said, you could live in one and rent out the other. And someday, if you play your cards right, you could get that thing to be cash flow positive. And I had no idea what that meant, but I thought, oh, I like those words together. Here on my teacher's salary, I like the thought of cash flow positive. I don't know how to get there, but I like that idea. So we bought that first duplex and we started playing real life Monopoly. And we started collecting duplexes. First it was Alpha, then Bravo, then Charlie and Delta, which are here in the Bay Area. And we started to get the hang of this whole house hacking thing, as the kids call it these days. And we thought, oh, well, let's just keep doing this. We'll go all the way to Zulu. We'll just collect the letters of the alphabet. But then, Jim, as you know, kids came along because that was next on the list, right? Kids came along and they kind of threw a wrench in everything. It's harder to house hack when you have kids because they have lots of stuff. They've got schools and friends and all these things. And so we ditched house hacking when they were younger, and we said, okay, well, if not house hacking, then what? We couldn't invest here in the Bay Area because it was so expensive and it's so restrictive. So we decided to look outside of the Bay Area, and that took us to Huntsville, Alabama. And when you buy in a place like Alabama, when you live in a place like the Bay Area, it looks like everything's on clearance. So I was talking to the broker and I was like, okay, give me 2 of those. I want 3 of those. And pretty much very quickly, we had amassed a portfolio of about 25 units in Huntsville. And what happened was, now I didn't get to the company part because this whole time I was just thinking, I'm just going to invest for myself, just for our own little family. I'm just going to, slowly collect these rental properties. And what happened was, along the way, I got so obsessed with this, so passionate about this. It was all I could do every time I talked with friends and family. And so inevitably they would say, oh, I want to do that too. I want cash flow positive. Teach me how to do that. And so I would start teaching them the process. And along the way, you know how it happens. Everybody's eyes start to glaze over and they're like, oh, no. I don't want to do the work. You misunderstand. I have this pile of money. I want to put that into real estate, but I don't want to do any of the work. And I said, well, sorry, I can't help you. That's not what I do. I only invest for myself. But then I had enough of these conversations where I started to realize, wait a second, I know all these people who have the same problem. And I don't know how to fix it yet, but if I could dig in and I could kind of figure this thing out, maybe I could create, some sort of small partnership. I didn't know anything about syndications at the time. And I thought maybe I could bring in, one or two people in with me on the next fourplex that I buy or something. And then I'll do all the work and they put in their money and it's a win-win. So that line of thinking then took me down the path. And that's when I discovered syndications. I was a decade into investing in real estate. I had never heard of passive investing before at that time. And when I found out about it, I was enraged. I said, nobody ever showed me the easy button. Nobody ever told me I could do this without doing all of the work. And so when I discovered that, that's what then led me to where I am now. And because I wanted to shout it from the rooftops and let people know that these types of opportunities were out there.
That's a great journey, a great story. And it's familiar also because I was a teacher when I got into real estate. And I love the way you say that syndications is the easy button. Now, that doesn't mean they're easy, but man, it's a lot easier than managing your own real estate. So I guess first question is, do you still have those duplexes and quads that you bought? Do you still have active real estate, or have you kind of fully transitioned into passive?
So now I've fully transitioned, and it took me a little bit, but there was one moment that changed it all for me. And that was the moment, I think my kids were, I think the older one was 3 and the younger one was maybe 6 months or so. And I got a call one day from my property manager about one of our fourplexes in Huntsville. And we were about to evict this tenant. I didn't have the heart to do it for months and months because she said, car accident and this person got sick and so on and so forth. And I said, okay, I'm so sorry that all that's happening to you, but she wasn't paying this whole time. And finally I had to put my foot down. I said, maybe it's better you find a different place to live. So the next day, the sheriff was supposed to show up. But the day before, my property manager calls me out of the blue, never a good sign. And she says, hey, so I've got good news and bad news. And she said, the good news is that tenant, she left. And I said, okay, well, that's a step in the right direction. And she said, but the bad news is before she left, she stopped up all the sinks and the tubs in her unit and she left the water running and then she took off. And by the time anybody knew what was happening, she had flooded out of this fourplex. She had flooded not just her unit, but the unit next door and the unit next door did that. So 3 of the 4 units were offline. This was Huntsville, humid Huntsville in the summer. We had fans going. We had to let things dry for weeks. I had no experience with this. I never dealt with this because with house hacking, your tenants live under the same roof. You see them every day. You talk to them. They're friends of yours. But with this, I had no experience with this level of vandalism and wrath. Serious. I mean, it seemed like she was angry about a whole lot more than maybe just living there. But so then that whole summer, I had to be on the phone with my property manager, with insurance, trying to figure out paperwork. Meanwhile, my kids are tiny. They want to play with me, and I couldn't do it. And so that was the moment, even though we had, about 24 doors in Huntsville, I said, you know what, this isn't the right fit. Now that I know there's other ways to invest in real estate at this phase in my life, I'm not shutting the door on rentals forever, but right now, when I want to focus on these other priorities in my life, this is not the right fit. So from that point, we started to divest and sell off all our rentals and move into passive investing. So that's what most of our portfolio is now.
Yeah, that again, it hits home a little bit because my moment was when I had a tenant. It was the final straw on just liquidating all of my assets that I was actively managing was the one in Dayton, Ohio, where something happened with there was like sewage in the basement, and this poor woman, she was pregnant and she got fired or not fired, she got laid off because of COVID, so she couldn't go work. And I kept telling the property manager we can't evict her because they were just going to evict her. I'm like, we can't do that. But then the sewage line, the city wouldn't allow us to repair it until COVID was over because you couldn't get permitting and all this stuff. So that was when I was like, okay, we got to find a new place for this poor woman. I'm not going to evict her, but also, she can't live in sewage so it's just a disaster. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have somebody else deal with those issues.
Right.
So I guess a question for you is, you started this business that you have, right, to help other people. So why are you so passionate about kind of showing that there, giving people access to syndication investing? Because both of us were doing active investing into real estate and had no idea there was this easy button. So now my mission, and it sounds like yours is similar, is not only do you want to get people into syndication, and if it fits them, maybe skip the active step, but you also want to tell everybody, hey, you don't have to just do Wall Street, right? There's this other world, alternatives. So can you just talk a little bit about your passion for just sending that message that, hey, there's something else out here, and syndications is doable for people like us?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I come at it from this angle of, I didn't know much about real estate when I first started investing in real estate. I kind of just fell into it. But, as a mom, as a working mom, I really wanted to be able to contribute to my family financially, even beyond the teacher's salary. And then eventually I got into game design and instructional design. But, I wanted to be able to supplement my salary and maybe someday, who knows, maybe quit my job and stay at home with my kids, even for, a sabbatical or a brief period of time. I wanted to have that freedom and flexibility. And I saw real estate as a way out, an exit, possibly. And I remember that the moment that light bulb came on for me, that real estate could slowly start to replace my income. And I thought, holy cow, nobody has ever taught me this. Nobody ever connected the dots for me. And imagine if other women, other moms had access to this and could build wealth for their families and live the life that they've always wanted and not feel that guilty feeling when, and I've felt this when my kids are knocking at my home office door wanting to play with me and I can't do it because I have to do have to do this thing in order to get paid so that our family can live the lifestyle that we want. And so I wanted to be able to help other women and moms to be able to similarly build that passive income and create that long-term wealth for their families. And I knew that if we were to empower women especially, that they would then in turn teach their friends, teach their kids, teach their communities, and it would have this ripple effect out.
And I think that's awesome, especially because women are kind of the missing ingredient in a lot of the real estate, and especially if you go to meetups and things, that's where we have a women's group at Left Field Investors where they have their own meetings, and it's just because it allows you to talk to people who are dealing with the same kind of issues, and it's also sometimes intimidating, I would assume, when you're walk in and you're the only woman in the room. And I experienced that at BEC. We had all the women from LFI had a meeting in a conference room, and they asked me to come in and say something. And I walked into a room full of women. And that's when I realized, Oh, okay. It is a little bit intimidating when you're the only one.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
talk a little bit about the concept of life by design. I've heard you talk about that, and I think that relates to this. But can you explain what does that mean, and how is that philosophy, guide your approach?
Yeah, when my business partner Julie and I got into this business, we always talked about it, that real estate, we are a real estate company, yes, but not really. We view real estate as a stepping stone, a way to get you from where you are now to this life by design. And what we mean when we say life by design, it's the opposite of a life by default, where you've got blinders on, you're just focused on doing the 9 to 5 for the 40 years, as you've been told, as we've all been told. That's the golden path to retirement. But, for some people, you have this wake up call, and you wake up and you think, wait a second, is this really the life that I want? Is this what I want to do with my one and precious life? Is to spend most of my time working and wait until retirement to truly live the life that I want? Or do I want that life now? And what does that life actually look like? And so a life by design looks completely different for everybody. One person might want to be able to stay at home with their kids. Another person might want to quit their job just for 6 months and travel the world. Another person might want to retire early and be able to travel full time. And so it looks different for everybody. And really, what we see as the power of real estate is that it creates that ongoing engine where you can start to passively create multiple streams of income and wealth for your family, so that you can figure out, what do you actually want to do? What do you want your life to look like? And it seems easy, but most people struggle more with that. Really, once you take the rails away, figuring out what you want your life to actually look like day to day, it's not an easy question to answer.
No, it's not. Especially, I love how you say life by default, right? Because that's how most of us are living it. That's how I was living it. I had 2 or 3 careers before I found real estate, and it was always just kind of following that path that you mentioned. And so that's easy, right? And that the analogy there to me is the same way people invest, right? Wall Street investing, your 401k, that stuff's easy because everyone's doing it, and you just kind of you sign up and off you go, where alternatives are hard and scary, and you got to kind of work at it to figure it out. Same with this life by design. But once you do it, man, does it put you in just a much better space. So can you talk a little bit about what Goodegg Investments is, and how that kind of helps people along their journey?
Absolutely. Well, Jim, just like you, I have a passion for education. And really, that's why we got into this space in the first place, was really to help people understand, whether they were going to invest with us or not, just understand what syndications are, what passive investing is, and figure out if it's the right path for you. And so at Goodegg, and the name comes from building your nest egg while doing good in the world. At Goodegg, our focus is on helping people to understand what this whole scary world of syndications is all about, making it a little bit less scary, and taking terms like, the number of times I've lost count of, I'm writing a blog post and I type something like capital preservation. And then I'm like, wait, delete. Protect your money.
Yeah.
Just explaining it in common, everyday terms that anybody can understand, to make the on-ramp a little bit more accessible. As you mentioned, alternatives are hard. You got to step outside of the norm. You've got to be bold, and you've got to be brave to be able to find a path that works for you. And our goal is to make that a little bit easier for people, just as you have with your community, to make it a little bit easier for people to connect and learn more about passive investing.
I love that. I mean, that's why I think one of the things I love in this kind of industry, this little niche that we have, is that we provide similar services in some ways, but we're all about collaborating, right? It's helping people,
Oh, yeah.
and if they can be served by Goodegg, then go for it. And if they can be served by Left Field Investors, great, or both. It doesn't matter. Let's just get more people into this space because of the power of it. So what are some of the common misconceptions or obstacles that people face when they're starting to come into, hey, real estate syndications are a thing. This passive income sounds pretty cool. What are some of the things that kind of trip people up as they're moving along in their journey?
I think one is first people kind of get in and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn. There's so many terms to understand, and I don't know what's going on in this. I don't know how to pick a market, and I don't know how to pick a property, and they think they have to do it all alone. And so I think that's the first thing is, as you mentioned, this is a very tight-knit community, and the people in this space I've never experienced before. I remember the first time I went to the Best Ever Conference. It was one of my first real estate conferences I'd ever been to. And I was blown away by the community and how open people were to sharing and to helping. And that's still the case to this day. And it astounds me every time. But I think that's the first thing, is to know that, if you're new in this space, you're not alone. There's people willing to help, because these are all, I see the people in real estate investing as kind of seekers, people who step outside the norm and they're looking for something more. And once they've found it, or once they've learned a little thing, these are people who love to look back and give a hand to somebody who's behind them and help somebody forward. And I think you'll find that throughout this community, is that there's people willing to help. And then another thing is, once you get to that point, trust but verify. Always trust but verify. I see people who, they get excited about this and they're like, oh, I've got 50K, or I've got 10K or 100K. I'm ready to invest. Okay, this one looks good. It's got pretty pictures. Yep, market looks good. Yep. Let me just throw my money at this one, right? And they jump in, and then later they go back and they say, wait a second, I thought this was supposed to be 8%, 10%, whatever returns. Why am I not getting my money? And then they go back and they look and they say, oh, looks like first year is supposed to be 2% or 4%. And they haven't done their due diligence to fully understand not only the returns, but the risks. And that is something that I see as a huge stumbling block, because once you get to that point, you've invested maybe too quickly, and then you realize this wasn't what you expected, or you've taken on a little bit more risk than you thought, then that's when people say, oh, this isn't for me. After this one investment, I'm done. I made a mistake with this one. This isn't worth it. I'm going back to my comfort zone, what I did before. Whereas if you take a little more time up front to do your due diligence, to talk to people in the community, to really understand the risks and rewards, then you go into that first investment or that second investment with eyes wide open. You know what you're getting into, and you're creating a solid foundation so that you can continue on this path regardless of what comes. Because as we all know, the real estate market is cyclical. It's not always going to be roses. And so you want to prepare yourself, no matter where you are in the cycle, or where we are in the cycle, for what's to come, so that you can build a strong path to reach your ultimate investing and wealth goals.
Visor provides investors with a secure platform that displays a comprehensive view of all of their holdings on a single, holistic dashboard. From real estate syndications to private equity, crypto to traditional investments, with AI-driven, unbiased, honest insights to maximize return, Visor is your one place to rule them all. Automating performance tracking, projecting future cash flow, analyzing all your financial documents, and much more in one powerful solution, making it easy to follow the money. Sign up for a free 30-day trial now at Visor.co. Investing in syndications can be a daunting task. Wiring a large sum of your hard-earned money to someone you talk to on the phone for 30 minutes can certainly be scary. How can you be confident in what you're doing? Steve Su, one of the founders of LFI, just published a book called Avoiding Rookie Errors as a Left Field Investor. 20 lessons learned from 14 years of investing in private syndications. This is by far the best book I've read on syndication investing. It's an easy-to-read book, chock full of great advice from Steve's experience as a passive investor. It is a must-read. Whether you're a first-time passive investor or a veteran, Go to www.leftfieldinvestors.com/books and click on the link to Avoiding Rookie Errors as a Left Field Investor. If you are a passive investor, you got to read this book. You talked about trust but verify. So when we're talking about sponsors, operators, GPs, whatever words you want to use for them, how do you vet that person? How do you get to the place where you trust and then you can verify? Because, a lot of times when we're talking about this at Left Field Investors, that's the most important part, is finding the right operator. Because if you choose a bad operator, it doesn't matter how good the deal is, right? So can you talk a little bit about how maybe you would approach vetting a sponsor from Goodegg's perspective, and then maybe kind of contrast that with how just a regular LP might do that same vetting?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with I'll put my own investor hat on, because I'm always looking for great opportunities out there to invest my own money as well. And it's not easy. There's a lot of different operators and sponsors, GPs out there. And so for me personally, as an investor, it comes down to two main things. One is the sponsor's track record. So I want to know not only the deals that they've done, but how did those deals ultimately fare, and what did their communications with their investors look like throughout the life cycle of that project? And two, I want to know, is this a group that's going to be open and honest with me, who shares my values? And so I kind of dig into that through asking questions. For example, if they send me a deal, I'll start to ask them questions. Even if I know the answers to the questions, doesn't matter. I'll ask them to see what they say. And if I'll check, I'm reading between the lines. Are they getting back to me in a timely manner? Are they giving me good answers with context? Are they showing me that they care about me and they have patience for me, they have time for me, they value me as an investor? Or are they giving me quick one-word answers, or worse, not even answering the questions that I'm asking? And so through that interaction, I'm able to discern not only what this deal is and what this investment is, but who am I investing with? And I think that's the most important part, is figuring out not just who the people on the team are, where do they live and what is their experience, but how do they interact with me as an investor? Because this is really going to be a partnership for many years potentially. And I want to know that my partners value me as much as I value them, so that it's a good fit. So on the investor side, that's kind of what I look for.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but when you talk about track record, I loved how you added in the communication of, as the investment goes on. I think that's important. But track record alone, and we're not looking at it alone, but one of the issues I think I have with track record is, I was a terrible asset manager, but if you looked at my track record, I made a ton of money when I was an active investor. And so because everyone, things were going well until they weren't. So when you look at track record, that might be deceiving because everyone had a good track record. So how do you get beyond that? And then I'll let you kind of go on to the other question I asked, which was about how Goodegg kind of evaluates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, it's the same on my side. I mean, when I look at track record, you've got to take into account not just the ultimate performance, but also where we are in the economic cycle. Over the last few years, many people did well. You didn't have to really do anything. Most people did well on their deals. If you bought at the right time and you sold at the right time, then most people did well. And so how do you then discern, are those same people going to do well now that the market is shifting a little bit and settling into a new phase? And, there's no magic answer for that, except that, for me, it comes down to the communication, because I know that there's no sponsor who will be able to know everything that's coming down the pike and be able to anticipate everything and do everything perfectly. Even if I could dig into their asset management skills and I could say, wow, look at all these previous deals and all the stuff that they did, all the strategic decisions they made to put these deals into a good place at the right time. They did really well. Well, that's, past. The past is no indicator of the future. But what I can discern from that is I can look and see, well, are these the type of people who, when things go wrong, because inevitably things will go wrong, will they try their best? And will they keep me in the loop during that? Even if their best is not, it doesn't make the deal a winner. And that's okay. I know that as an investor, I'm taking a risk. I know I'm not going to win on every deal that I invest in. I know there's going to be some losses, but it's the experience of that I'm after. I want to know, if the ship's going down, is the captain still going to be in communication with me? Are they still going to let me know what's going on? And are they doing everything they can? Or are they going to abandon ship and they're going to take the first lifeboat out and leave me on the ship with no information? That's what I want to know. I don't expect them to be perfect, but I do expect them to keep me in the loop and try their very best.
Yeah, that's a exactly great answer. It's all about communication. So Goodegg is a little bit different, right? You're not necessarily operating all of your deals. So can you talk a little bit about how you vet an operator then from Goodegg's perspective? And also,
Yeah.
sorry, but also talk a little bit about how Goodegg operates in that.
Yeah. So we've evolved over the years. We've been in business about 7 years now. And at the beginning, we were bringing little bits of investor capital to our partners' deals. And we would be a drop in the bucket with all of the investors that they had in those deals. But over the years, as we've been able to build our investor base and more people have referred us to their friends, we've been able to bring more and more capital to these deals. And so we've kind of shifted our model from a sort of a co-sponsor model to a more joint venture model, where we are more 50-50 and we are part of not only the capital piece, but also the acquisitions on the front end from the very beginning, all the way through the asset management on the back end. So we are now part of everything. And it's been a journey. I got to tell you, we've partnered with many different people over the years, and I wish we could say we had 100% the best partners. Everybody was so great. But unfortunately, even if they're well-intentioned, not every business grows at the same pace. And so even if we partnered with them at a great time in their business and our business, but then our business took off or their business took off at a different pace or trajectory, then, it might have been a good fit at the beginning, but then over time, it wasn't as good of a fit. So we've gone through a lot of growth spurts and growing pains over the years, and we've learned a lot when it comes to vetting partners. And, now the process looks very different from back in the day when we'd meet them at a conference, we'd have a dinner, and we'd say, yeah, you seem pretty cool. We seem like cool people too. Let's do a deal together. Why not? And now it's a much more stringent process where not only Julie and I, but our whole team gets involved in vetting different aspects of the partnership. But one thing that has been a real game changer for us is we don't rush into anything. It's like a marriage. You don't want to rush into something. You want to take your time. You want to date a little bit. You want to get to know them. You want to see what other deals they're doing, and you want to see who they are as people. So we always try to fly out to meet with our partners before we do a deal with them. We walk certain properties with them if we can. We get to know the markets, and we really take our time, because what we want to do now is we want to have very few partners. We don't want to have dozens of partners. We just want to have very few, but really good partners who are very in line with our values and our vision, and that we can build a solid foundation with and do deals over and over with them again. And I'm glad to say we do have a handful of those partners now that we've done a tremendous amount of work to vet, to get to know, and whom we continue to do ongoing work with to make sure that, we're always aligned, we're always on the same page, that they value us as much as we value them.
And so let's talk about the current market in asset classes you guys are looking into. I know it's multifamily, and I saw hotels and also preferred equity. Are there quality deals out there right now for LPs to invest in? Because I see a lot of people are kind of on the sidelines, and but when you have a bucket of capital and you're an LP, it's hard to just sit there and wait, right? And you never know when the
Yeah.
right time is. So you don't want to time the market. So can you just give us an overview of kind of the markets that you're looking at, or maybe the asset classes you're looking at, and then what you're seeing as far as opportunities for LPs?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm still learning myself as an LP, but wise people have told me, one, not to time the market, and two, that there's opportunities no matter where you are in the market cycle. You just have to know where to look. And so where we currently are, it's not that there are not opportunities out there. It's that we've got to sharpen our pencils and look a little bit deeper. And so that's what we've been doing. And part of that process is not only looking deeper, but also expanding out and thinking about, okay, well, we've traditionally done, let's say, this very small niche of multifamily where it's class B and value add and only in these markets. But what if we expanded to also class A? Or what if we expanded to these markets as well? Or what if we expanded to lease ups rather than value add? What would that look like? Would our numbers still hold true? Do we have the skill set on our team to be able to support a project like that? Would our investors be interested in something like that? So those are the questions we're asking, is how can we, and it's all about how can we. It's not about, we can't do this. We say, okay, how can we do this a little bit differently? How can we look at what we've traditionally done and mold that a little bit, be flexible with that a little bit to be able to find those really good deals in this current market environment. And so, for example, you mentioned multifamily and hotels. Those are kind of what we're focused on right now, not because the best deals are in multifamily and hotels. No, it's that we have really great partnerships in those areas. And because of that, we're able to get access to opportunities that maybe some others don't have access to. And so, for example, we have currently under contract a multifamily asset in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That's not a major market. In fact, it's an emerging market. So it's a little bit of a different profile than what we've done in the past. But we said, okay, things are happening here. This is, a growing market. Things are coming here. It's a college town. So there's opportunity here. Now, this looks a little bit different than some of our previous deals, but what's special and unique about this asset? And this particular asset we're buying, it was built in the 1990s. But believe it or not, it's still held by the original developer. They developed it in the 90s and they've held it for 30 years. And so it's pristine. It's a beautiful property. They've taken really good care of it. And most of the residents have stayed for a long time, partly because they have this mandate, this internal corporate mandate where they only raise rents by a very small percentage each year. And because of that, as Winston-Salem grows, those rents haven't been keeping up with the potential. And so we see an opportunity to come in and, many of the units are, 20, 30 years old at this point. So there's an opportunity to improve them and bring up those rents. And so it's opportunities like this, which may be off the beaten path, which is different from what we've looked for in the past. But if you dig a little deeper, that's when these types of opportunities start to come to the surface because they're out there. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, and that's the whole part of the difficult market, right? If you're not looking and not trying, you're certainly not going to find anything. I want to pivot. I know we're at the end of the time here, but I want to talk about kind of your perspective as an LP and as as working with Goodegg for capital calls and deals that aren't are withholding distributions, right? I kind of look at it that, yeah, of course you don't want a capital call, but sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's a good thing because it might save a deal. Withheld distributions, I look at that as the same way. It's building up your reserves rather than paying stuff out. So how are you viewing those, and how do you think that those should be communicated to investors? Because what I'm seeing is if you communicate it effectively, it lessens the pain so much that it's really
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable. And if you're just hiding or not communicating or delaying and then saying, everything's great, everything's great, everything's great. Oh, oops, we have a capital call.
Mm-hmm.
That's a disaster. So I've kind of said what I think, but can you kind of just expand on that?
Oh, yeah. And I talk about this all the time. It's like, we've all been on an airplane before and there's turbulence that hits. And what you want when the turbulence hits and the trays are shaking and the flight attendants are, knocking things over, what you want during that time is for the captain to come on and say, folks, this is no problem. We've hit a little bit of turbulence. Just buckle up, sit back. We're going to find some smoother air here in just a moment. You want that kind of message. You don't want one is the captain to come on and freak out and say, oh my gosh, something's terrible. We've never seen this before. Or what might be even worse is nothing. The captain doesn't even come on. They don't say anything. You look at the flight attendants, they pretend nothing's happening. That is potentially way worse because then you feel so alone. You feel like, oh my gosh, am I the only one panicking here? Does everybody else know something that I don't? And so that's the worst feeling as an LP. And I've been on that side of it, is where I'm like, I don't know what's happening. And when you're on a plane, at least you're with other people that you can see. But when you're an investor, you don't know who the other investors are. Your only point of contact is with the sponsor operator. And so you reach out, and if they don't get back to you, then you really feel like things are going wrong. And so I've been on that end. I hate feeling that way. That's why I do so much work up front to make sure that these are good people, that they're going to keep me in the loop, that I have multiple ways of reaching out to them, and that I can be assured if something like that were to happen, they would keep me in the loop. And so I will tell you on the, at Goodegg, this is a huge, huge priority of ours. And I won't sit here and pretend that everything's been smooth and all gravy for us. We've certainly come across some really, really tough challenges, and we're not out of the woods yet. But communication is a big part of what we hold dear, because we are and we have been investors ourselves. And so, for example, we had a deal recently where the loan was coming due, but because of where we are in the market cycle, the property value wasn't where it was when we bought it. And so we had a shortfall, and we had to do a lot of work behind the scenes to restructure the loan and bring in a new partner, and also call for capital. But it wasn't something where, we needed the capital on January 10th and we reached out to investors on January 9th. No, we had been investing with or communicating with our investors for months and months, even a whole year prior, letting them know, hey guys, this is coming down the pike. This is what we're working on internally to try to navigate through this successfully. And then when option one didn't work, we said, hey guys, we tried this one. We did everything we could. This one is not going to work. So we're going to cross option one off the list, but we still have 2 and 3. So here's what we're doing next. And every step of the way, we kept our investors in the loop. And because they're our partners, they're our most important partners, and we don't want to ever keep our partners in the dark. And so even if it's bad news, we believe you always deliver that as soon as possible, let people know. And we held lots of open, office hours, webinars, sent lots of emails, created infographics, as much as we could to keep people in the loop and informed throughout. And I can't say that every investor was happy. Some people were like, capital call, what are you doing? I don't want to do this. I want to get out of this. But we did everything we could at every step of the way to make sure that everybody had all the information that they needed and had all the options before them so they could make the right decision for their family. And ultimately, we were able to successfully restructure that loan. Whew, that's a few years back in my life. And, like I said, we're not out of the woods yet, but I think it's that philosophy of just trying to keep people in the loop as much as possible. That builds that true partnership over time.
Yeah, that is so well said. I mean, I love that analogy. I'm definitely going to steal it, and I'll try to give you credit, but that's just brilliant. I love it. But the way you handle your own capital call, as you were talking, I'm thinking, man, if I had a capital call that was handled that way, I'd be much more likely to participate because I understand it. And now we're having a bunch of deals where there's capital calls where all they do is say, hey, it's a capital call. They don't tell you anything. And so you're panicking, right? And you're like, well, do I do it? I have no idea. But if even for the GPs, if you do all this work ahead of time, just communicate what's happening, then investors are ready. There's no surprises. And I'm like, okay, I know one's coming. Thank you. I'll prepare. It's a great way to do business. So I really appreciate you both sharing that analogy and the way you guys got through it, because that's important for people to see that some operators handle it well and others don't. And the ones that operate or handle it well, you're going to have repeat investors. They're not going to say, oh, capital call, I'm never investing with you again. But a lot of these other operators are going to have exactly that. So just a great example. Appreciate you sharing that. The last question I always ask is, what's a great podcast that you listen to? And as I told you, you cannot say the Life and Money Show. That's your podcast. It will be in the show notes. It is a great show, so I recommend it. But what's another podcast that you like to listen to?
Oh my gosh, one that I've really fallen hard for is Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. I consider myself an armchairy now, but one of their greatest segments that I love is, and I listen to this with my kids, even despite all the profanity in the show, but it's called Armchair Anonymous. So every Friday they have an Armchair Anonymous, which is like Alcoholics Anonymous, but they have a theme and they invite listeners to come on to share their own stories related to that theme. And it's just so fun to get to hear people's outrageous real life stories that have happened to them, in their lives. And it comes back to the life by design is, I want to know that I feel like life is like a buffet. There's all these different options. And I want to know what other people are doing, what they're experiencing. And I want to laugh with them. I want to cry with them, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And that's what I love most about that podcast is the humanity of it.
Yeah, I love that one too, the authenticity that they have. But I got to tell you, you're braver than I am to listen to that with your kids. So kudos to you. So finally,
they might have been scarred a time or two.
Yeah, I'm sure. Finally, if listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about Goodegg Investments, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the best place to go is our website. It's goodegginvestments.com. We have a ton of resources on there for you. And if any of the listeners have questions for me specifically, I'm always an open book. You can reach out to me at Annie@goodegginvestments.com.
Excellent. Well, Annie, thank you so much. This has been fabulous. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you. Have a deal in mind and a group of investors ready to go? Use TribeVest to pool your capital together through a multi-member LLC. TribeVest has streamlined the group investment process, making it easy, quick, and safe to do business with others. Start a tribe and invite your partners to join. Then you can use the platform to collaborate with your partners, pool capital, and manage your joint investments. I'm in 12 tribes myself. It is a great way to learn from others, spread risk, and get into deals at lower minimums. Go to tribevest.com to get started today. I really enjoyed that episode with Annie, man. Just some great stuff in there. She started as a teacher and then kind of stumbled into real estate similar to me. And then as she talked about, was playing real life Monopoly with getting up to 25 units or whatever she had, and then found syndications. And the way she explained that is she was kind of upset, like, what? This is the easy button for real estate. And I had the same, I didn't think of the clever saying there, but I had the same kind of epiphany when I found syndication. I'm like, why am I doing all this active stuff when I can hire an asset manager who does it better than I do and hit that easy button and do the syndication? So I really liked that. And also listening to her talk about, when she was in the W-2, she was thinking of real estate as an exit. And whether you're doing active real estate or syndications, it can be an exit, and it can be an optional exit where, you partially exit or you just have that as a backup, or it can be a full exit where you're like, you know what, I just want to get out of my W-2 and have this life that she calls it life by design rather than a life by default. And that's powerful to think of. I've heard people talk about a life by design before. I never know exactly what you mean, but when you compare it to the life by default, which is what most of us end up doing, at least at some point in our lives, it's just really powerful, because the life by default is go to college, get a job, get married, put money in a 401k, retire, die. And that is very different than a life by design where you're choosing what you want to do, and real estate is your assist. It just helps you out, gets you to the place where you can do things that you choose rather than things that are chosen for you. And then we got into the conversations about operators, and communication is key. And it's clear that Annie understands that. And at Goodegg, they communication is really a pillar of what they do. And that is nice to hear as an LP. And I absolutely loved the turbulence example, especially since I was on a plane recently where we had an aborted takeoff, which is terrifying, slamming on the brakes while you're on the runway. And what Annie was talking about made me think of that, because there was absolute silence from the cockpit. The pilot didn't communicate. And I get it. The pilot had some other things to do. He was, stopping the plane from taking off, and that's super important. But I would have liked just a little bit of communication at some point in the process before we smelled the tires burning that just kind of says, yeah, we're going to survive this. We're okay. And then get back to doing what you need to do. And again, I get it. When you're in flight and having to deal with the emergency, it's different than maybe in the turbulence that she used. But the analogy is phenomenal, because what you want from an operator is, if things are getting shaky, you want communication. You don't want just them to shut down. And we have so many operators out here who seem like they are trying to delay, hoping maybe that interest rates go down and save them, rather than communicating along the way. In Annie's example, I don't think that would have been an upsetting capital call, because you had a year to prepare for it and you're hoping all these other options would happen, but you know that they are thinking about it, they're planning, and they're trying to save the asset. Where other people that I've seen have done the capital calls where all of a sudden, they're sending reports month after month. Everything looks fine. We're at 92% occupancy. And then you get to, halfway through the year and everything has been fine. And they say, oops, we have a capital call. Well, that's terrible communication. Yes, they were communicating the whole time, but they weren't communicating the right things. And so I think we need a training class for operators. You need to communicate the good and the bad, because if you're communicating, then your investors will trust you and perhaps invest with you again. But if you're not communicating, if you go dark and you're not saying the bad things and you're just saying the good things, those are operators that they're going to lose a lot of investors when they have a capital call. So again, great episode. Lots of good stuff with Annie. Really appreciate her being on the show. That's all we have this time. We'll catch you next time in the left field. Thanks for hanging out in the left field with us today. If you are interested in becoming a left fielder, you can find us on the World Wide Web at www.leftfieldinvestor.com and click the subscribe button to join our community. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to the show on your podcast player so you don't miss an episode. If you really enjoyed the show, a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts would be appreciated.
This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be considered financial advice. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Passive Investing from Left Field and Left Field Investors. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.